Without any further ado, I'm going to bring Eamonn from Rebellion up to the stage. Hi, Eamonn.
Hello.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm not enjoying the weather at the minute.
I know it's rubbish, isn't it? At least it is here as well. Yeah, I know
Yeah.
we're starting 2 minutes late, but don't worry at all because we've got loads of time. So, yeah, we're looking forward to your talk. And before I let you start, though, I just wanted to say to everyone to make sure you pop some questions into the Q&A. But yeah, it's great to have you here, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, no, it's bit. I mean, strange times, but I guess this is one of the very few industries where we're able to do things like this remotely, and I think we've found a new way of working. Really, I'm sure everybody would agree that we've definitely evolved again, and that's one of the things I love about this games industry. This industry just evolves all the time. I mean, I started off in the games industry about 15 years ago, and the change within employment, within how we use things like social media, how we work, has just been phenomenal. I started off in recruitment, just a traditional recruiter, but at college I was always in love with games. Like, I was a big gamer growing up, but I found it very hard to get into the games industry, but I found I was very good at recruitment. So I was lucky enough to get a job at an agency who are in the games industry, and actually taught me a lot about, this beautiful industry, how niche it is, and it brought my passion back for both recruitment and games. And so I learned a lot in a short space of time. And then I went on to set up a company I recently sold called Avatar Games Recruitment, which I think is pretty well known in the industry. And that, for me, in terms of building a team and in terms of employment branding and being a director in the games industry, was such, my word, I could write a book on it. It was such an experience. So I basically had all this ambition to build something. I looked at other agencies and what they weren't doing in the industry, and I looked at what actual studios wanted and created these bolt-on services and tried to plug little holes really in the industry. And I set up Avatar Games Recruitment in my bedroom on about £800 against, all my family were just saying this is never going to work. Nobody really believed it would work, and it did. It worked. It worked really well, and I think it was just having that self-belief. So I went on to set up Avatar, and I remember my first hire was the defining one. To go from a one-man band to actually making that first hire was so important. And then even before making hires, I was thinking to myself, okay, what is this company? What kind of team am I looking to build here? What do I actually stand for? And what makes this company different to the thousands of other agencies out there? And it taught me so much about, I guess, ambition, marketing, about that us against them mentality, not in a competitive way, not in an aggressive way, but that team, that internal team and building that spirit. So I thought, okay, so Avatar's about the spirit of startup, and that's what it is. It's a startup. And I mean, I was 24 years old at the time. I didn't really know much about the world as well. So it taught me a lot. And so building a team from start was fun, and everything that came with that, the challenges of being a director, from doing everything from setting up the finances for it, being a counsellor, effectively doing everything from looking after the clients to even photoshopping adverts myself, because we just didn't have the money to do anything. And that was really good fun. And we developed into a company that I think it's been going for about 11 years, 12 years. And in that time, I think over the space of 11 years, they only lost 5 people for a team of 6 to 12 people. That's pretty impressive, So we always retained staff really well. And the way we did that was to look at not just getting people in, but actually how are we going to keep these people in? Can we create a clear career progression for them? It's not just about paying the best salary. It's also giving them a great package of benefits, work-life balance, and making them feel like they're part of something that's really special. So after a bit of time, I went from from being external with Avatar, I wanted to be closer to studios, and I was lucky to work with a number of companies like Codemasters, Jagex, Natural Motion, and various others internally as a contractor. So that was my path out of being an agency recruiter and looking into actually building teams internally and learning more about employment branding. The power of employment branding now is phenomenal. I mean, you see now in social media, everybody, you know, so many companies have really embraced it, you know, interacting with their audience and ways to sell a company. So I learned a lot from there, and from each company I've been at, I've always done something where I've taken away a lesson of something they might not be doing that's right, but something they're also doing that's right, and I've kind of brought all of that together. And then I recently joined Rebellion, and it's been really good fun, to be honest. So I've been able to put all of that together into create a roadmap with a really good team, and look at everything from how we put out our jobs to how we actually interact with the people who are coming to us, you know, candidate experience and stuff. But going to building the right team, which I think is one of the topics actually I'm covering. So building the right team is really interesting, because I've been lucky enough to build teams in a small startup to giant publishers. So I've had that ability to see how it works in different places. So what I usually do is, or what I recommend to do is, first of all, assess the team you've already got. Look at what works and where the strengths are and where the weaknesses are and where you need to add value to that. And I think it's also important to have some form of philosophy and direction in that team as well. You know, where are we trying to take this team? What is the actual overall ambition, rather than just bringing in taskmasters? Are we looking for leaders? Are we looking for real team players? And also shaping the culture of the team. Generally, when I've built my own department, I've always had a fun sort of team who are really good souls. They're pretty ambitious, but they'll also, you know, everybody's got each other's back and they want to help each other, and it's all for the greater cause of something. And then we've always been on the same track of what we're looking to achieve, and that's important that you all pull together as one. So when I'm looking for candidates for that team, I'll be looking at the characteristics. What kind of personalities do we want? I've seen some fantastic people, skill-wise and experience-wise, that I knew if we brought them in would do a great job, but perhaps would probably rock the apple cart a little bit. So you're always trying to balance that up and figure out what kind of personalities are we bringing in, and what skills do they have as well, and what are their motivations for coming on board. You know, so why is it they want to leave a fantastic job where they've done really well to join us, and looking at the history and going on to the chemistry side, and you know, again, having that chemistry within that team, that you're all, I guess, the social aspects as well, where we're all connected and we all want to do well for each other. And I think having clear lines of communication is really, really important between managers, between all staff. I mean, if anybody's got an issue, it's always good to be very open and never be afraid, and teach the team to never be afraid of making mistakes. You know, because that's how you learn ultimately. If you make mistakes, that's how you're going to learn. And I think it's important for companies to identify future leaders, first of all, rather than looking for a leader outside of your business. The amount of times that we've already got leaders within a business that just perhaps haven't perhaps had the chance to, or the platform to step up to the plate and show what they can offer. So I think looking internally at what we have is always important before going out to market, and giving people the opportunity that they don't have to move somewhere else. They can actually stay with us for the long term, a bit like what's happened with Avatar and Step Up. I mean, I had a graduate join Avatar who's now a director, and did a fantastic job, and now has more shares than I've got in the company. Wow. So, you know, so it just shows you that if you really give people that chance to prove themselves, and you can really support them, then it just, you can go anywhere. You don't always need to move. So
yeah, do you find that as well in terms of when you say building the right team and finding people internally within? Obviously you've got to get a range of diverse experiences in order to create a project. Do you find that you can cultivate that diversity from within as well as it rather than externally, such as giving people the opportunity to learn new ideas rather than just grabbing people to create a complete team?
Yeah, I think you can. I think you can look at what you've, as I say, looking at what you have already, but also influencing them to go and get, to fight. I mean, I always tell people to go and get hobbies, to go and learn new skills. Like I'm pretty good at speaking German now, and I do it as a hobby at the side, because I think it's always good to have outside interests.
Yeah.
And just, I'm probably quite eccentric to be fair, but bring those experiences to people. And so I think having a group of people, you can tend to find that sometimes if you've got a group of people who aren't doing so well at the job, perhaps, or have lost a bit of direction, you already usually have the personalities there. It's bringing that personality out, and it's finding ways to do that. And I think having open lines of communication and a direction together usually does that. And giving people, like empowering people is really important. I think if you want people to...
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say on that, in terms of talking to and empower people and building that right team, as the topic is, do you think it's important to, rather than, I mean, obviously it's important to have someone at the top guiding the channels, but do you think it's important to give everyone a position of responsibility and a chance to be a part of decision-making and really agency and ownership of what you're creating?
Absolutely, 100%. And I think that's where, if you look at the games industry 15 years ago, it probably wasn't, like many other industries, to be fair, it probably wasn't quite there. And it was more, there was probably more of a stiff hierarchy with it. I think now you're seeing that more and more with companies, where giving somebody ownership and the empowerment to actually go and do something, to create something, it just adds to the overall value of the company, because everybody then feels that they're part of something, and everybody's important. What I always remind people, no matter how small that a certain role might be to play, or how big it is, that everybody is important to everybody. I mean, if you've got somebody who just does basic admin for you, if you don't have that person, all of a sudden your job's in jeopardy as well. So every little section is as important as the other. It's just different tasks.
Yeah, I think given that, obviously, as well, I think one thing that'd be interesting to a lot of the people who are in the audience, from your expertise and insight, is that given this is obviously the Incredible Indies talk, there might be a lot of 1 or 2 person teams here who are thinking about scaling. And as someone who's done that sort of thing, do you think that there is, we can't always go out and create an entire team from scratch. So do you think there's key areas that smaller teams and companies, or maybe even just individual people, should be looking for as a priority when growing their team?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I did the first hire, I needed somebody who was basically who could mirror me and could be a good all-rounder, that wasn't scared of coming into a startup, but had that same ambition. And I think it's really, when you get a startup going, there's always an excitement. I mean, I remember the first year was phenomenal, because it was all brand new, and business the first 3 months were difficult because finances took time to come in. So before making a hire, I always made sure I had at least 12 months of money in the bank for that hire. And then anything that would go on top, I would just keep on continually build that, because I didn't want to put them. And that's another thing as well. It's that responsibility of making sure you look after your first few hires and giving them that reassurance that they might be leaving a big company, coming to a startup, and just giving them that security, but freedom, that actually we are creating something, and no one day is the same as the other. I remember, the first hire I got in just hit the ground running, and then it freed me up then to bring in more business, to go out there, I could sleep at night for once, and knowing I had some extra team members.
That's an interesting point, what you make there. We always hear that in the recruitment area and when people build in the right team, hit the ground running. But obviously there might be times when you want to bring someone more junior in and grow them and build them, with the values of the company and the team that you're creating. When do you think that the situation differs between bringing someone in who maybe has all that established experience and, like you say, and obviously adaptability is key, but when is the right time to bring someone new in and help them develop and grow and put that time and mentorship into them versus bringing someone in who kind of knows what they can do and can just hit it straight away?
Yeah, I mean, and that's been the most important part for Avatar was the juniors that came in, because they basically run the company now.
Yeah.
And they really installed into the way that we work. But in that time, we were also able to, before bringing a junior in, we had to establish what our actual culture was, what our message was to people, what do we stand for, and what makes us different. Because there's only so long you can go on the whole, we're a startup, because after 2 years, you're technically not a startup anymore. And, you're looking at the next stages of how you build your team. So once we'd figured out what we were, I had an idea of what we were, but trying to translate that to everybody else was an experience in itself as well. And eventually it really clicked together, and it was a case of, okay, we came in as the underdogs who just kept winning things. It was just brilliant to watch this fiercely independent team just growing and breaking all the rules, just rewriting the rule book of the startup. And just, I would say, if somebody would come to me with an idea and say, should we try this out? I'd be like, you know what, let's do it. It's not something we'd usually do, but let's just give it a go. It's like R&D and see if it works. So I would, I think my first junior came in after 18 months, because I wanted to make sure that every hire we brought in wasn't a quick fix. This person was going to get the time to really have a chance at the job, and it wasn't a case of hire and fire, because I didn't want to create that kind of atmosphere. I wanted to bring in people and really invest in people as well. I mean, especially in recruitment, ultimately in recruitment, everybody has the same tools. We generally have the same access to the network, but it's the personality that's the actual product. So you quickly realize that actually the branding's great, but the personalities you have inside of an agency is your actual product. And I guess it's like that with games. I mean, if you've got a great game idea, but you don't have the right team around you who believe in that idea and are able to deliver on that, then again, it just shows you how important people actually are.
I mean, on that point, like you say, creating that culture and that ethos is arguably the most important thing about building a team, and that camaraderie. But obviously building a team is only one part of it. Sometimes we hear of companies who've grown too big, sort of losing their soul, their essence. What do you think, from your experience, is essential from taking a company from indie and small, maybe even all the way up to big, but never losing what makes the culture of the company? It's sort of never losing its soul in a sense.
I think sustainability has always been, that is king in everything within business. And you can get to, I mean, I had a friend who was a bit of a cautionary tale, really, who set up a tremendously good recruiter. And he set up a business that he took on so much business that it just crippled everything. And he went into administration, I think it was after 12 months. So we were in positions with Avatar where, and it was difficult, but we'd have to turn some business away, and we'd have to look at the business we could deliver on. And we needed to be honest with our customers and say, you're better off going to our competitor because they will look after you. And at the minute, I don't think we can do that, but let's talk in the future when we're in and hopefully you'll remember this token of honesty and recommendation, and then we'd love to work with you in the future. And I think, having that and making sure that you don't oversubscribe on business and you just have enough for everybody, but then you've got a future pipeline as well. It's a balancing act. We did get to a point where we were about 3 or 4 people short, and it really affected us because we opened up in America and we got a lot of business all at once. So I had to make some fairly quick hires that worked out, thankfully, because we already had the ethos of the company.
Yeah, exactly.
It took me personally out of my comfort zone because it was against my way of hiring, of just going, right, we'll hire that person, and hopefully this works out. And it did, thankfully. But you see so many times where if you, as you say, like keeping the values of a company is so important. I think it also shows that you need to have a good, I mean, I've always had a board who all share the same values. And so we always keep that direction, what makes the company, that DNA of the company together, because it's, somebody might leave and they'll go on to do something else. So you always want to make sure that whoever's coming in is coming into that role, and that role is actually existing without somebody being there, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
So that, they're walking into a culture that they feel support from day one, and they feel a sense of purpose as soon as they come in. So it is a balancing act. And I learned the hard way, to be fair, when I started. It was, if I could go back to myself 10 years, 15 years ago, and then have a word with myself on certain mistakes I've made, which I've fixed, it'd be, in hindsight, it'd be great. But the one thing I did was I was very flexible as a director. As a business, you always have to be flexible, and you always have to adapt to change quickly, and just be a little bit fearless, to be honest.
I suppose, and with what you just said as well, is not be afraid of making some mistakes, but importantly, learning from them.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at some of the most successful people in the industry. I mean, look at Mark Zuckerberg. He made so many startups that didn't work before Facebook. All these people have had startups that failed, but it's what you take. I mean, if you've got the right product, you're halfway there, and if you get the right team, it's great. But never be afraid to fail, because that's where your greater lessons come from, and you can apply them in the future. When you're in the same position, you'll know what to do then. It's very hard to read from a book. You could have theory from a book and learn how to do things a certain way, but doing it on the job, learning on the job, is so much more rewarding, and having the experience for real can just shape everything.
Yeah, well, at this point, we've got a couple of minutes left. So I just thought, basically, it'd be great to get some of the questions in from the audience, if that's all right.
Sure.
So one of the questions from Daksh is, what are the things that someone should keep in mind when hiring people to work remotely? Any suggestions on what tools can help every team member stay organised? And I wanted to make sure we got that in, because obviously that is vital to what's happening in the world right now.
I'm glad you've mentioned this, and it's a really good question, because we were talking about this at Rebellion. It's something we brought in is, actually one of the things you need to make sure you do, first of all, tools aside and everything, is because people are working on their own, they're more lonely. It's making sure in terms of mental health that they have that support there.
Definitely. And
we're checking on people to make sure, look, if you're having a hard time, if you're finding it a little bit difficult at home, go for a walk, get some fresh air, because it can be frustrating being remote sometimes.
Yeah, well, we're all experiencing it right now, aren't we?
Yeah, so I think making sure, first of all, that you've got the support system that, look, if you need to have a chat at any time, let me know. Checking in with people. I mean, we just have Zoom calls just to have a laugh with each other, just to keep that social side. We have coffee breaks at certain times in the day as well, and just all have coffee on Zoom. And we'll just talk about anything from what we've done at the weekend to just crazy stuff that's happened or anything. But having making sure they've got the setup and the right internet and things like that. We generally supply equipment. I always did with Avatar. I'd supply the equipment to people and make sure everybody's licenses are up to date. But yeah, I think remote working can be really successful if you give that care to somebody. And there's an element of trust with that comes with it. I think previous to lockdown, there may be trust issues with some companies thinking, will they be as productive if they're not, if they're not at the office? But a lot of people have I think productivity in most companies has gone up by 60%, so sometimes being in the comfort of your own home is nicer than public transport and, going somewhere that's not your own home. Sometimes you perform better. So I'd make sure, as well as the basics of supplying things, is just to make sure you give that support and check in with people, not to see what they're actually working on, but just to make sure they're
Yeah.
okay, or do they need you to deliver? I mean, you know, with Avatar, we've done it a lot. We work remotely, and every so often I'd send like a box of wine to somebody, or,
Oh.
you know, like a little surprise of sweets or something, just little gifts.
It's like you say, it's making sure everyone feels like they're part of a team and not on their own.
Yeah.
And so obviously the technological tools to do that, we're using Zoom, or it could be Slack, Skype,
Yeah.
Discord, you know, as long as you've got everyone on the same groups and involved together so that no one's on their own, it's quite valuable, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, with Zoom at the minute, it used to be Skype, I think, before Zoom, but I think it just works so well to be able to see everybody in one room. And, you know, it's going to be very strange to go back to on-site working.
I know, isn't it just? Another question we've got, which is quite interesting, is what is your opinion on rehiring someone that left by their own will or due to outside factors?
Very good question. You know, I actually did this with Avatar, and I asked exactly why they left. And I think it's a case of give and take, because I think it's usually seen as most people would frown upon rehiring somebody, but you've got to think, I mean, were they good when they were with you? Did you get on with them? Then great. And why did they leave? If they said, okay, I left because I needed a change of scenery and I wanted to learn new skills, then actually you can benefit from that, because if they're coming back to you with those new skills and they're able to share that information, experience, that's great. I think if somebody left under a bit of a cloud, you kind of have to look at that. But I think it's a case by case thing. I would certainly rehire somebody if they just went because they wanted to learn something new. I think that's just human nature, that sometimes a change can do us good and keep us refreshed, and it's having an open mind with that. And it's certainly, I'd certainly rehire for the right reasons.
Yeah.
You know?
Another question we've got is, how does hiring for a one-man outfit differ from hiring for an existing small team?
I would say you're allowed more room to make a mistake's the wrong word, but if something doesn't work out in a team, if somebody's having a tough time integrating into a team, you can spend more of your time actually getting them up to speed. Whereas I think the pressures with an indie is that if you haven't got that time and the finances to actually commit to helping somebody come up to speed, it can be the difference between, you know, delaying a project, and it can really hurt you. So I tend to find with interviews for a startup that's generally, they're more interrogating, really. But it's usually people that you've known from the past, who you've worked with, who you know can give you something that, you know what they can actually bring to the table right away because you've worked with them, or they're a referral from somebody and they could suit it. So yeah, you are allowed a little bit more flexibility when you've already got a team and you can have that time. So it's scary really hiring as an indie, but also as well, when you see that first hire come in and it really works out, it's exciting because you're basically doubled the size of your company, but you're taking the steps into seeing your creation start to grow. And once you see they've bought into that as well, and then they adapt that culture and they give it to the next person who's coming in, all of a sudden it takes the pressure away from you. So swings and roundabouts, really.
Yeah, and we've got a minute left, so I'll very quickly ask the final question just to make sure everyone's had a chance. So the final question we've got is, how do you ensure that the hiring process is fair and equal? You mentioned people who might rock the apple cart. How do you balance diversity with the comfort of the current team?
I think that's, again, especially in this day and age, that's a really, really good question. I think you have to give... You know, I've always looked at skills and personality for me. That's the thing. Personality, if somebody's like a recruiter, they've been in recruitment, so something's worked, but if they've got the personality where they are, you know, a peaceful person who's got a good soul, who's willing to share, I don't think I've ever, you know, we've got we had at Avatar such a diverse group of people who were from all walks of life, and I actually quite like that. I like when you find people from all walks of life, it can bring so much to the table, you know, and both from a cultural sort of situation to personalities to actual work experience as well. So I think it's always, you've got to give everybody a shot. Everybody deserves a chance to interview who's right for the job. And then it's just going on from there, really. I know that a lot of companies do sort of a check on diversity and see what they've actually hired as well. So I think if you feel that you're too weighted on one side, it's always good to go out in the market maybe to sort of talk about this more socially and talk about inclusion as well. So it's quite an open question really, and it's one that's always evolving, I think, as time goes on.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for being with us. We've run out of time, although I say we've run out of time, we're right on time. So thank you so much for being with us. Really fascinating, to learn about all your experiences and how that can be actioned into companies who are looking to grow.
Yeah, no, I wish everybody the best of luck as well, and to stay healthy and safe during this unusual time in the world. So thank you.
No, thank you so much. Thank you very much.